Thank you for visiting the YouTube channel for bestbiblecommentaries.com. In this video, I'd like to show you one of the best reviewed commentaries on the book of Revelation. Before I do, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to this channel so you can see videos on Bible commentaries, study Bibles, and other resources that help people understand God's Word. Biblical scholar Grant R. Osborne is the author of Revelation in the Baker Exegetical Commentary on the New Testament series, or the BECNT series. This commentary was published in 2002. It is 896 pages in length. Grant Osborne passed away in 2018. I never had the privilege of interacting with him, but he's one of those men, one of those professors who seem to make a positive impact on all of his students, and that's clear when you read or listen to those who learned from Dr. Osborne. He taught at Trinity Evangelical Divinity School, and he is well known for his book, The Hermeneutical Spiral, which is widely praised resource. He also wrote the Romans volume in the IVP New Testament Commentary series, and Lexham Press has also been publishing the Osborne New Testament Commentary series, where you can get different volumes on the New Testament written by Grant Osborne. He is conservative, he is evangelical, he is Arminian, and he is also premillennial, and I'll talk more about that momentarily. I wanted to show you that there's a different cover design for this series now. This particular one is the original cover design that's no longer in print. You can still find this one used, but sometimes on secondary markets you see this particular cover design listed for very high prices. I'm assuming it's because the seller thinks the volume's out of print. It's not out of print. It just has a new cover design, and it's the same content in each one. So if you get it new today, hot off the press, you're going to get this cover design. And that's the one I'll use to talk more about this commentary. The example passage that I'll show before I get into some theological examples comes from Revelation 17, verses 1 through 18. And this layout is typical of all the passages in this particular commentary. So we have the title of the passage, and then the introduction to the section is in gray. There's introductory comments, and there's the outline, followed by the exegesis and exposition. So the exegesis is the original, the English translation, followed by the exposition, which goes verse by verse through the passage, and it follows this outline given here. So this is the introduction, verses Revelation 17, verses 1 and 2, followed by commentary, and then B, description of the great prostitute, 17, 3 through 6a. There is Greek lettering in the main body of the text. It's followed by transliteration. I would call this a mid-level commentary, though. A reader does not need to know Greek in order to follow what Osborne's saying. Although it's helpful to know Greek, you'll probably maximize more of the details of the commentary if you know Greek. But I would say that you don't need to know Greek to follow Osborne's main points. And so in that way, I would say it's mid-level, leaning more toward advanced, leaning more toward technical, than leaning the other way toward introductory. But I would still put it in the category of a mid-level commentary. So the commentary proceeds through the passage, giving the exposition, and then every section has a summary box that is also in gray. So it's titled Summary and Contextualization. And so in this particular case, the passage is summarized and contextualized in about a page and a half, about five or six different paragraphs. Now, if you think that this might be, because of the Greek, this might be a little bit beyond where you're at, here's just a helpful hint if you want to utilize this commentary, is read the introductory gray box and the concluding gray box before you read the content of the verse-by-verse commentary. That's just going to help you get an overview of every passage. Read the introductory section and the concluding section, and then go back and read the middle section, and I think you'll be able to follow it along a little bit better. So I'll get to some examples from the commentary in just a moment. I want to share with you a couple of reviews. In general, Reviewers are very friendly toward on this commentary. This volume is well praised for Osborne. He's premillennial, but he is very cordial toward amillennial and postmillennial positions. He doesn't take a hard line in the sense of divisiveness, and he seriously entertains those interpretations of Revelation, and he even will disagree with a premillennial interpretation here and there in this particular volume. He interacts with Beale. So if you didn't know, G.K. Beale's commentary on Revelation is usually ranked very, very high, if not the highest, with regard to best reviewed commentaries on Revelation. Osborne does interact with Beale. Now, Beale's amillennial, and he has some unique and well-received interpretations of Revelation. Osborne interacts with those, and he does so from a little bit different perspective. Osborne came out, by the way, this volume came out about 3 or 4 years after Beale, so you're not going to find Beale interacting with this commentary, but you'll find Osborne interacting with Beale just based on when they came out. So here is, let me just give you a quote from a journal that is that's amillennial, an academic journal that's amillennial. So not the same perspective as Osborne, but still gives Osborne praise. Whether one agrees with premillennialism or not, Osborne's commentary is an important contribution to the interpretation of the book of Revelation, and that comes from the Calvin Theological Journal review of this particular commentary. Evangelical Theological Society review said, like an airplane in flight, the material for each passage begins with a takeoff, introductory portion, and after the sectional commentary, lands with a concluding summary and contextualization. And that's just what I was showing you earlier with the gray boxes. That if it's a little bit of a challenge to wade through some of the material in this commentary, read the introductory box and the conclusion gray box, and then read the middle. And I really think you'll do okay with it. I think the vast majority of pastors would do okay with it, even without that technique. But I think that just could be particularly helpful. Another reviewer said that this commentary is clear, concise, and readable, more so than G.K. Beale and David Ounds. And Ound is the author of the Revelation commentary in the Word Biblical Commentary series. So that's not a comparison of the scholarship found in the volumes. That's just a comparison of the readability. Out of those three, Beale, Owen, and Osborne, that Osborne reads the easiest. A couple of example passages that I'll show you. The first one is Revelation 3:10. And I'm going to cite this example because there's a common premillennial interpretation of Revelation 3:10 that Osborne disagrees with. So Revelation 3:10 says, Jesus is saying to the church of Philadelphia, he says, since you have kept my command to endure patiently, I will also keep you from the hour of trial that is going to come upon the whole world to test those who live on the earth. And that's from the NIV. So the issue, he begins a section by saying this is a often discussed verse commentaries on Revelation, because one premillennial interpretation is to see the rapture in this verse, and that interpretation guides a premillennial reader through subsequent chapters of Revelation. So it's an important discussion point. So again, premillennialism, some premillennialists will see the rapture in this verse because it talks about being saved from the hour of trial that is coming upon the whole world. So those are kind of the key phrases in that verse. Others argue against that and say that it doesn't teach that believers will completely escape trial, but they'll be saved through the trial. And a common cross-reference for that perspective is John 17:15, where Jesus is praying, don't take them out of the world, but save them from the evil one. So it's not a complete removal from the trial, rather it's keep them safe in the midst of trial. So And then premillennialists will argue against that usage of John 17:15. Wolford does that, for example. He argues against using that verse as a cross-reference and explains why in his commentary on Revelation. So what does Osborne think about this? He says, he gives several pages of discussion, but he says, in light of all of this, his previous points, he says, the view that sees this as protection rather than exemption from the trial is more likely. So he's taking issue with some premillennial interpreters who see the rapture in that particular verse. And then he says, kind of a conclusion to the discussion, he says, the point is that the Philadelphia church, identified with all faithful believers here, will be protected from the wrath of God against the unbelievers, but not from the wrath of Satan, and that this protection is within and not a removal from, as in pre-tribulation rapture, that wrath. Again, this protection is within and not a removal from that wrath. Now he has his parentheses, as in pre-tribulation rapture. So he's disagreeing with that. And there's a note here. If you look at the bottom of the page, he says, this does not mean that the pre-trib position is necessarily wrong, only that Revelation 3:10 cannot be used in favor of this position. So that's Revelation 3:10. I'll show you one more example from Revelation 12:18 to 13:10. And this is just a good passage to go to, especially if you don't know, like, what is a commentator? What's their view? If you see a commentary on Revelation in a bookstore and you're not sure what perspective it takes, turn to Revelation 13 and you're going to get a good idea based on how the commentator interprets the beast. So what does Osborne say about the beast? He says, the beast is the son of the dragon, a further parody on Christ, and this imitation motif continues in the mortal wound that is healed, a parody on the death and resurrection of Christ. It seems obvious, here's where Osborne will tip his hand. It seems obvious that the beast builds on the Antichrist theme of the New Testament. As such, he conducts the final war against God and his people, as well as demanding universal worship, probably alluding to the empirical cult demanding worship of the emperor. So I should say on that point that Osborne will see some of the symbolism as in Revelation as having fulfillment in the first century, and have final fulfillment in the end of time, at the end of the world, in the eschaton. So that approach to interpreting the symbols is not uncommon for Osborne. Now, in the final section, he has, actually, one thing I wanted to show is that he has an excursus, which is like an additional article, usually a topical article on the Antichrist. So here is, in the middle of this passage, excursus, the Antichrist. And he goes into this discussion on the Antichrist, bringing in the book of Daniel, 1 John, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. So that's about a 2-page article within this particular section. And then the end of the passage is another gray box. And it says that, he says, Satan's final rebellion will be waged relentlessly to fight this great battle against God and his people. He parodies the Holy Trinity and establishes his own false trinity. The dragon himself, the beast from the sea, the Antichrist, and the beast from the earth, or false prophet, the religious leader of the movement. The dragon uses these creatures to gain control of both the government and religious apparatus, creating a one-world government with the Antichrist as quote-unquote king of kings and a one-world religion with the Antichrist as the idol of the world. This combination of political and religious control is the core of the absolute power of the false trinity over the nations. This has always been Satan's method, from the Egyptians in Moses' time, to the Babylonians and Persians of Daniel's day, to the Romans of John's day, to the Nazis and Stalin in the 21st century. And he goes on. So that's his summary and contextualization. So he's doing two things. He's summarizing it from his premillennial perspective, and then he's also making connection to the present day or just the present time with references to Nazi and Stalin and the persecution of believers. And so in the summary and contextualization, I do think pastors will find help in making application for the passages in their teaching and preaching. So I hope this video has been helpful to you in understanding more about Revelation commentary by Grant Osborne. I'll put some more information down below with some links. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you for visiting bestbiblecommentaries.com.